Vitality.
Vitality Unfiltered.
Unfiltered.
With David Bauder.
Thank you for coming back to Vitality Unfiltered. I'm Dave Bauder, your host, and with me from Riverhead, New York is Dr. Shah via Zoom. He's calling in today. And today's conversation, we're going to go ahead and hit nutrition for patients that are currently on a GLP-1, or if you want to talk about tirzepatide, GLP-1 plus the GIP. And we are going to discuss and cover why you need to eat correctly and what you need to eat. And it's a big problem right now with patients on weight loss medications. We get a lot of patients that come into the clinic and they're just not adequately fed. And if we don't do this correctly, we're going to have long-term problems that are going to basically last the rest of your life. So we'll break this down into different sections, but to get this started, why don't we go ahead and cover what is the main mechanism for how GLP-1s and GIPs, how do they control the appetite in patients?
So as you recall, GLP-1 is peptide that's secreted by the small intestine. Once the stomach starts filling up with food, you slowly get gastric emptying into the small intestine. The body naturally secretes GLP-1. And then GLP-1 signals to the stomach to, wrap up, delay the gastric emptying, and it kind of increases your satiety from the stomach standpoint, but it also does signal the brain as well to kind of decrease satiety or increase satiety signals, decrease hunger signaling. That's the rudimentary way that they work. Tirzepatide has the added benefit kind of in not necessarily related to the satiety portion, but the GIP aspect, the glucose insulinotropic effect, is more so for increased insulin secretion and then increased response at the peripheral tissues to sequester the plasma glucose levels into the muscles and whatever tissues that need that energy. So it's really important to understand that this is a naturally occurring mechanism. So when it comes to nutritional input, we're generally not recommending crazy, there's no such thing as a GLP-1 diet. You'll see this a lot in the marketing and things like that, but it becomes more important that we're precise about the nutritional inputs that we have.
When I think about the GLP-1s and the GIPs, it's kind of always struck me a little bit interesting. Like if GIP is all by itself, it seems like, that hormone, coming also from the small intestine, that it can have a fat storing effect. Ultimately GIP is related to fat storage, but when that GIP is associated with GLP-1, then it has a synergistic application where it actually is the opposite, right? Where it makes the GLP work better. It has appetite control and the fat storage, but it seems like it has a big component when you put the two together from the storage aspect of how the body stores the energies in the body. Do you think
not to segue too far, but I'm curious if you saw this, David, but so you saw retatrutide, right? Has the triple agonist effect with glucagon. There's a white paper that came out of Eli Lilly that they are quietly working on a quadruple agonist now.
What's the fourth?
It's just came out. It's a calcitonin modulation. Which I have to read more about this, but they're already, retatrutide hasn't hit the market yet, right? And they're already working on the fourth one. There's a part of me that feels like we're just at the tip of the iceberg here when it comes to these peptides and getting onto these pathways. And, you and I, we're on the clinical end of this, right? And we're helping patients. But these pharmacological people, these people that are developing these drugs, they have models back there that we don't even understand. And we're not going to be privy to, because this is the proprietary information that they have that they can make these multi-billion-dollar drugs with. Suffice it to say, these are amazing drugs and they're just incredibly powerful and they impact real pathways in your body.
And, I think that just drives home the point of where we're going with modern medicine and how easy it would be to get distracted about what really matters. And it's about eating correctly and exercise, these baseline things, because down the road, are we getting into an environment? We're, are we getting into an environment where it's just going to be a medication fix and patients can go off and be, I don't need to, is the medication going to take care of everything, or are the patients going to even have to eat correctly? Or is it just going to be a medication solution? Think about the great results that we get with just GLP-1. And now
semaglutide still works.
Yeah, it works. It works, and now they're talking about, no, that's not good. Oh, and then, just yesterday I saw that Wegovy Wegovy, the max dose of Wegovy is just 2.4. Well, they just changed it. Now 7.2 is the max dose of Wegovy. And I'm like, oh, wow. So we just, that's a pretty big bump up from 2.4. And so are we just going to make this a medication solution for here forward? And that brings me into kind of where I was going to go with the next piece of this is, and I had it just before we sat down to record this episode, and I can't get this patient to stop thinking any differently. It's like, I just really don't eat anything. I'm like, gosh, we got to eat. So many patients fall into this trap where they think weight loss is just about not eating. Like I don't need to eat. I need to lose weight, so I don't need to eat. And they really lose track of, it's not about not eating. It's really about eating correctly and nourishing your body. And I think that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest problem I have with my patients. Maybe the second. I think the number one problem that I have with my patients is too many people are so carb centric, and there's too many calories are coming in. Too many dead calories are coming in from processed foods, wasted foods, and carbohydrates. And then the second biggest thing is the patients that get on these medications, they just don't adequately fuel their body, and they're not eating correctly. They're all skipping breakfast, and they just don't want to eat food.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. And I think that's where we as clinicians have to differentiate ourselves. We're of the same mind here where I'm not leaning on the medication for everything here. I want the patient to sustain an active and sustainable lifestyle. And the nutritional optimization piece is, to me, probably the most important, with strength training and cardiorespiratory fitness being a quick 2 and 3. But one thing I try to explain to patients, speaking of a carb-centric diet, I'm not a carb hater. We're not sitting here saying that we hate carbs or like carbs are the devil or anything like that. That's just going to get us skewered on social media. Carbs have a purpose. They are a fuel source. But when you audit the average American's nutritional protocol, they're eating like hundreds of grams of carbohydrates per day. It is not uncommon for a person to have like a muffin or a bagel for breakfast, 2 slices of pizza in the afternoon, or like a big sandwich or a hoagie. And then it's so-and-so's birthday in the office, so you have to have chocolate cake as well. And then like 6 ounces of pasta in the evening. That's like 400 grams of carbohydrates, and you're totally filling up on that. So coming into that like protein piece, I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit here, but the reason why protein becomes so important is because as a proportion of your diet, it becomes more important. So like what happens is we need to cut down, like if you're eating 400 grams of carbohydrates and like 50 grams of protein, we need to get those carbs down to like 100, 150, and we got to get the protein up to 100. This is not like a crazy thing to ask for. And in the calorie deficit state, this is so critically important, because when you are in a calorie deficit state, and if you suddenly starve yourself of calories, your body might enter starvation mode and draw upon its amino acid requirements from your muscle, which you do not want it to do. You want to really disincentivize that process. And it becomes hard when your nutritional inputs are smaller. So like if what you're eating is carb-centric and not protein-centric, you almost certainly will not meet your protein requirements.
I know that previously when I've talked to you, and we have a little bit of a difference of opinion about the amount of protein a person should eat. Or I think if I remember correctly, you kind of, other people, I mean, this is not just unique to how you think, but I believe if I remember right, you kind of view as, get the protein in, it'll take care of itself. I don't really sign on to that. I'm more of like the logic, small amounts of protein spread over the day, to maximize the utility of that protein. I mean, but if you pull out some clinical evidence and kind of pull it out, there's kind of an argument to be made that, if you pretty much get the protein in your body's going to take care of it anyway. But I have this idea, like when I'm treating patients, if we're in a calorically deficit environment, then I want every single calorie to matter. And when I think about it, like from tooth to tail, and I'm like the calories going in, the proteins going in, I don't want the body to be storing anything. I want it to be using everything as it's taking it in. And I just have that. I feel like my patients that eat 3 to 4 small meals will, let's say we had a number of 1,500 calories. And if I have a patient that consumes 1,500 calories in a single meal, in a day, 24-hour time period, or if I have another patient can take that 1,500 calories and divide it into 4 meals. It always has come across, and it's anecdotal evidence because, nothing has been, there hasn't been necessarily any formal clinical study done, but it always seems on the surface that the patients that eat smaller meals more frequently have better energy. They have less hunger cravings in the evening. They can stick to the program better. They have more energy to work out. They have more lean muscle mass on their body, and they decrease fats quicker, especially, or they don't plateau as frequently. A lot of my patients that eat like 1 or 2 times a day, they seem to kind of plateau out. I just have that observation that it just seems that the fuel isn't being used adequately when they're eating larger meals, like in a smaller number. I mean, what are your thoughts?
No, I do recall us talking about it, and I just want to add a caveat, which is like, if you look at the food science literature, they do state when it comes to a hypertrophic response and a response in muscle acquisition, it doesn't seem to matter with the protein timing. There's this whole like protein timing hypothesis, and it turns out it like doesn't matter. Like if you're trying to get gains, so long as on average during the week you're getting your protein in, it'll work. The other side of this is what you were talking about, and I have to agree with you on this, which is like when it comes to success in maintaining that nutritional strategy, for me, satiety is the key. So I actually do advocate for patients to eat a little bit throughout the day because I do want them to be satiated. I want the energy levels to be good throughout the day. So I when it comes to that, like a weight loss patient, definitely focus on that. When I have another patient that's like, I need to put on muscle mass, I'm really struggling to get like 150 grams of protein a day, I explain like, listen, if you end up getting 75 of them in one meal, don't stress about it. Like you can get it throughout the day. It's fine.
What kind of measurement do you use to tell patients for like protein intake? What's the number?
For me, I mean, people have different ones. I just go by an easy one, which is 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass. And obviously you can just use an online calculator to do lean body mass, or you can do an actual body composition analysis, either through bioimpedance, like on a scale. Ones that have electrodes on the feet and hands are probably going to be better. Like InBody and SCCA are 2 good companies. And then DEXA obviously is another good one.
Yeah. Like
I'll tell you, I'm 150 pounds, 120 lean body mass. And like I target around 120 grams of protein a day. That's like my average.
Yeah. I think sometimes people get misled there that they, if they weigh 200 pounds, they forget that if they have, if they're 40% body fat, the fat really doesn't, it's easy to have too many calories going in if you're eating to your overall body weight. So that lean muscle mass piece matters a lot. And do you have, when you're coaching with your clients and your patients, what do you think is your most challenging point to get them to eat correctly?
Honestly, it's just escaping old habits. Some people are really habituated in the way they eat. Liquid calories are really hard. Some people are very, very addicted to certain drinks. Drinking habits, alcohol is another big one. People don't realize how much weight they can put on by just drinking alcohol. I mean, one alcoholic beverage is like 100 calories, and it's really bad calories, right? Your liver detoxifies it, turns into fat, basically, visceral fat at that. Other people will say like they can't get enough protein in, and that I can break down pretty quickly by identifying the protein sources that they enjoy and encouraging them to eat it throughout the day. Some people think for some reason that they can only have like large protein at like dinner, and I'm like, no, you can have it at breakfast. Like there are no rules about breakfast. People are like, oh, well, what can I eat for breakfast? There's so many limited options for breakfast. This is a social construct, right? People are like, there are certain breakfast foods. So like I can only eat certain things at breakfast. And it's not true. Like who's to say why is General Mills okay to tell us that we can have candy for breakfast? All these cereals and garbage muffins and things like that. But then if I tell you to eat like a salad with chicken or, 4 hard-boiled eggs, like I'm the weird guy. You know what I'm saying? Like you can eat a more substantial breakfast. You can eat a medium-sized lunch or a larger lunch and a small dinner. Like that's okay. Do what works for you.
Yeah. The other day, my wife and I ended up in Jim's restaurant, and they're open kind of late. And I'm like, well, my wife's eating an omelet like at 10 o'clock at night. And I'm like, well, like it doesn't matter. It's an omelet normally.
Does not matter.
Yeah. Sometimes when I was thinking back to my primary care days when I was treating patients, and patients would walk in and one of the most common complaints that we see is fatigue. We see fatigue a lot. People come in, they complain of fatigue. Our weight loss patients, I'm always tired. And, if you go back to the clinical days, I sat there and go, well, as soon as somebody comes in for fatigue, you're going to think about, are they anemic? Is their thyroid working? You start going through these disease processes that are possibly contributing to the fatigue. But in reality, and especially in my early days when I was seeing patients, I probably didn't do a great job asking, are you eating and are you drinking water? Because like eating correctly, if I've learned that since, many years ago I learned it, but so many people are walking around tired and they haven't drank any water all day, or they're dizzy.
Yes.
Okay. They're tired. I don't have energy to work out. And then you ask them what you eat today. And you alluded to earlier, maybe they just ate a bagel for breakfast. They skipped lunch and now they're, 6:00 at night and they haven't eaten anything. Well, of course you're going to be tired. And there's just no question about it.
Yeah. The hydration piece is key.
Oh, it is. It matters. Hydration. There's no doubt about it that it contributes to fatigue. So when you are seeing your weight loss patients, what is the key? Like, if you were to say, what are the 2 or 3 pearls that you'd like to give every patient when it comes to eating healthy and setting themselves up for a successful program? What do you let them know?
I kind of give them a little bit of tough love, if I'm being honest. I'm not here to assuage your ego or hold your hand. Like, I really want to empower patients. So that's really critical for me. So when I explain, when I design a nutritional protocol to a patient, I have them explain it back to me. I need to understand that you understand. And so when I design a protocol, I explain that you need to understand this nutritional accounting like you understand your books, like your banking and your finances, right? This all needs to make sense to you. And if it doesn't, you're not going to pay attention to it. You're not going to keep track and you're not going to hold yourself accountable. So I go over the education around protein, macronutrient profiles, protein, carbohydrates, fats. I go over different sources for them. I build different meals for them that'll be consistent. And I explain also the targets might change over time. If I have someone who's losing 50 pounds, I explain as you get more and more efficient, as your body loses more and more weight, we are going to have to adapt and update our nutritional protocol. You're going to have to eat less and less and less as you nadir out on your weight. So yeah, I don't sugarcoat things. I want them to be empowered. I don't think my patients are dumb. They can understand this. Explain it to them. Hold them accountable. Have a feedback loop. Tell them to come back with you. Give them a little homework assignment. Say, hey, in 4 weeks, I want to know how you did with X, Y, and Z. They come back to me and they report back. They really appreciate that accountability.
Yeah, I'd like to also use this, especially patients that have food noise issues or they lack discipline on eating correctly. I always try to break down to them that this is the perfect time to reestablish your habit. Because you've got the tool of the medication. The medication is going to support you from an emotional standpoint or the food noise standpoint. I go, this is the moment in time where you can start to condition yourself to eat correctly, start to think about food as medicine. Because in an idealistic world, they're not going to be on high dose semaglutide or high dose tirzepatide the rest of their life. That would be wonderful, right? And you got to have those core habits in place so you can sustain this after the fact. Otherwise, it's just if you don't go about this the right way and you just eat whenever you're hungry while you're on a weight loss medication and then you stop the weight loss medication, it's going to unravel really rapidly on you. Is there anything you tell patients from a long-term, thinking long-term success pattern? What do you try to setting them up for long-term success? Is there anything else that you can think of that we like to cover with our patients?
That framing that you explained of it being a window of opportunity, I do use that framing a lot. I do explain that they have an opportunity to establish new habits and that food is just probably going to be one part of it. So I'm very quick to add on movement, strength training, cardiorespiratory fitness, mental well-being, spiritual well-being. I layer on a lot of different things to anchor them and help them be successful in the long term. There are things that are, all of our patients are different, if they have stressors at home, if their partner, for example, is not on board with how they're doing, our long-term success is going to be not so great. You know, like we have to appreciate everything that's around them. And I do my part. I do what I can to make sure everything's in their favor. It's like, for example, with postmenopausal women or perimenopausal women, I think hormone replacement therapy is an excellent adjunct to the weight loss journey. You know, it's almost like it almost behooves you to make sure they have enough energy, testosterone, etc., to lose the weight and then sustain the lean muscle mass moving forward. What else for long-term success? I mean, I do, not to make it sound depressing, but like I explain, like there's no like we're at point A and then we get to point B and then we're done. Like there's no done. You know, there's an arrow going from point A to point B, and that arrow is you. You're the arrow. You know, you're always going. And so when you're always going, when you're always moving, you're a dynamic biological, you know, creature. If something changes, you have to learn how to react. And that's why I think the education piece is so important. You know, I don't want to just prescribe stuff and then keep holding their hand. I want them to be empowered and to learn and to educate themselves so that when the time comes that they need to right the ship, they know to either do it or seek out our help.
I really like how you just laid that out, saying, you know, if the patient comes in, I want to lose 40 pounds. 40 pounds is not the end point. 40 pounds is just the starting point of something else. Like you're right on. I mean, because like that, you know, that could turn into something great. Like you could have a patient that never exercised a day in their life. They lose their 40 pounds and now they're running 10Ks. You know, like, you know, that's that piece that has to keep going. It does not stop with 40 pounds of weight loss. It's just the start of something else. And that's absolutely correct. Is there, real quick, do you do anything different while they're on the way down in the weight loss phase for exercise? Do you augment and change their exercise at all?
Personally, I try to get them not worry about or focus too intently on really intense cardiorespiratory fitness. For whatever reason, everyone who comes in through the doors, they're like, oh, like, doc, I'll start running miles tomorrow. And I'll say, no, you're 50 pounds overweight. You're not going to be able to run miles. You're going to hurt yourself. Cardiovascular activity, especially at high heart rate zones, is very calorically intensive. You're going to get very hungry. You're going to get very tired. I don't focus on cardiorespiratory fitness, not in the early weight loss period. I focus on the nutrition, and then if they've never done strength training, I teach them about light strength training just to work their way up to the courage of like getting into strength training. Because even a little bit of strength training will put that stimulus on the muscle to preserve itself. Okay, especially in the context of a high or appropriate protein diet. If you are in a light calorie deficit, you're strength training, there's a good chance you'll just have fat loss and preserve all of your muscle. And I think, you know, our patients, they're busy. They don't have like 6 hours a day to dedicate to this, right? Yes, I would love to have them do like swim and yoga and do some like high rocks training and some strength. Like I would, if I could do that, I would love to do that. Right. I would love to train all day, right? I don't have the time. So like whatever limited time I have for them, at least in the initial weight loss phase, I go nutrition, hard and heavy on the strength training, ramp up the strength training. And then once they're like getting close to goal weight, then I consider adding like some intense cardiac exercise. I'm not saying they shouldn't walk or anything. Like I encourage walking for sure, like postprandial walking, like walk 20 minutes after lunch, dinner, sure thing. But you don't need to like start running marathons. That's a common thing that comes across my desk, I've just noticed. Has that happened to you as well?
Oh yeah, all the time. As I also will go on, like sometimes the prior runners are the hardest people to get to lose weight, believe it or not. And I fully believe that, like, you know, like whenever I have like a ultra triathlete or a ultra marathon runner or something like, or marathon runners even, it seems like those, and then let's say they retired or stopped the sport and then they gained a bunch of weight. It always seems like that's the hardest patient to lose weight. And my belief on this is that they've created metabolic adaptations in their body when they were training so much. And so they utilize energy really effectively and efficiently. So it's not as easy for them to burn weight, you know, like versus an Olympic sprinter, you know, if the Olympic sprinter gains weight and then they come into the clinic, I can just, you know, that individual, they can drop weight like crazy. Or NFL football, you know, it's a different type of body, but somebody that's conditioned their body their whole life as a runner, endurance athlete, it seems like they're really hard to get weight off when they gain weight. But I'm right with you on this.
They're very energy efficient.
Yeah, they're very. I always I always tell them that they turn their body into a Toyota Prius. They get great gas mileage, right? And it just is a little bit harder to get the weight back off. But I'm right there with you on all of these, these patients that are coming in. It's not about getting out there and running 3, 4, 5 miles a day to try to lose the weight. You're going to have knee problems. You're going to get plantar fasciitis. You're going to make a problem, and then we're going to have another problem to try to fix. Wait for the weight to come off, and then start training for fitness. Then that's the start of the next phase, right? That's getting to go into the next phase. Yeah. So I don't know, what else should we talk about?
I just have to talk about the whole like GLP-1 high protein marketing that's happening right now. I just want patients to be very cautious about the marketing. Everything is purporting to be high protein, right? It's like, oh, this has protein in it. If you put protein into a shit food, it doesn't mean that you should eat it. Like Dunkin' Donuts has like, if they came out with I swear I saw this, and I might be making this up, like a high protein donut or something like that. Like that does not make sense. Okay. Like if you have a 100 gram carbohydrate bomb and you add 20 grams of protein to it, that's not still worth eating. It's all about the macronutrient balance. Like if Starbucks gives you a frappa, maca, mocha, whatever, the same thing that it used to be, but then they add 10 grams of protein or 20 grams of protein, that's not exactly the way I want you to go about it. So just be like very wary of the protein marketing. Turn everything around. Look at the nutritional label, look at the added sugar, look at how much fat is in it, look at how much carbohydrates in it, and then the protein as a ratio of everything else. So like just be very wary of that.
It's such a good point. Dunkin' Donuts, or like any donut shop out there, shouldn't say just Dunkin' Donuts, right? So they bake, like some type of 100 gram carb bomb with 100 grams of fat with 20 grams of protein, and like that's a GLP-1. That's what you should be eating for weight loss. Oh my God.
No.
So yeah, great, Dr. Shah, great discussion. All right. Great to have you on. This is officially our first Zoom call. All right. Dr. Shah was down here like 2 weeks ago in the studio, and we recorded some episodes, but we decided to try to do our first one via Zoom here to see how it works out. So want to thank you for being on the show today. And if you guys enjoyed the show, make sure you click the subscribe button below. All right. You all have a great day.
Thanks for joining us on Vitality Unfiltered with David Bauder. Addressing norms, busting myths, and uncovering health realities for a more vibrant life today. For more expert insights and real talk, make sure to subscribe and join us next time.